And just to firstly introduce ourselves, I'm here from Abalimi, Abalimi Bezekhaya, a non-profit organization based in Cape Town. And really we train support urban small-scale farmers to grow organic vegetables for food security and income generation. And we are basically working mainly Khayelitsha, Nyanga, Gugs, Philippi. Just a quick visual. This is, I think, around about 94. This is, I think, about 2010. Same garden, same space, just to illustrate what it is that we do. Here you can see quite a recent photograph, 3 hectares of garden, and just another one from the top. So we really focus on providing support to these small-scale farmers. So the first question that I was asked to consider is, what's the function or the role of the urban agriculture in the food system? And I was listening also to what the other speakers were saying, but I would still like to bring it back to how we also quite often get to the response that we make. And this is very much based on what is known as the farmer development chain that was developed quite a few years ago by Abalimi. And it basically looks at how do the farmers also move through the process from survival, subsistence, livelihood through to commercial phase. But what I'm wanting to focus on here is that what we're finding is that there's the social impact, the sharing and caring is a very important element. But we find that is more likely happening in the survival, in the earlier stage of the process. As you go along the chain, you'll see that the social impact actually decreases. However, the sustainable livelihoods increase, the opportunity to be able to sell produce as you go along the chain obviously increases. I still also agree that this is not the solution, but it is a part of the solution, and it's a contribution, and I believe an important contributing part as well. What we also find, what it brings to the table is improved nutrition, and we're finding that more and more. My field team also, we've just developed a nutrition training program because this is what the community is asking for, trying to understand why organic vegetables are also more beneficial. And then the other thing is food security, and that also goes across the chain. And again, it's not that it is the answer to food security, but it is an accessible and accessible and additional to the overall solution. Just to say that out of that, we have come up with the 4 pillars of development, and we've had this for quite a few years, but this is basically what Abalimi does. And these 4 pillars of development is based on farmer development chain and what we found is actually needed by the farmers. Second question I was asked to look at is looking at the main constraints and limitations. And what we look at here is the results of the sustainability index. This is based on the farmer development chain as well. And as you can see, these are different gardens that have been rated, and you can see the ones that are sort of lagging behind. And you can see definitely what they're lagging behind on is group organization, money management, self-evaluation, and record keeping. These are the main issues that they're dealing with as individuals within their gardens. You also find anomalies such as this garden here, where their physical isn't as good, although on the overall rate they're doing well. The reason being that they actually can't get a lease agreement. So what are the main constraints? Access to land. Yeah, you can see almost anything gets used to actually plant your veggies in. Access to manure, soil building. This is not just for production, but for actual soil building as an infrastructure cost. Access to infrastructure, yeah, we're very fortunate that DOA also assists with this. However, you can only access it if you've got a lease agreement, which comes back to the access to land. Access to training and support is also important for the farmers. This is something that Abalimi does, and Abalimi also assists with access to resources. But it's also very important that these resources are actually accessible and subsidized. Access to market as well. Harvest of Hope has done a lot of work, established in 2016, and paid a lot of money out to the farmers, various different farmers. And what we've seen has happened since then. PD, OZCF, others have come along and created a similar market. During COVID-19, to touch on that, we've had Food Flow, who just during the COVID period have paid over 1.5 million over to small scale farmers. We're also starting to see that the example that the SASSA tenders are actually including the requirement to actually purchase from small scale farmers. I see I'm almost out of time, so I'm just going to try and wrap up here. Our COVID response was through manure runs, taking the resources through to the community. We've seen a huge increase in new food gardens, the need for this. We've been working with the community, implementing this. And here already you can see some of the results that have happened just during COVID. So last question, what would enable small scale farmers to be more sustainable and profitable from a policy perspective? There it really boils down to the urban agricultural policy for City of Cape Town and then provincial as well needs to be reviewed. It needs a home and a hot body to be able to have somebody that who we can engage with. We haven't really had that for a while. When that policy is reviewed, we need active engagement with the CSOs around how we can actually, so what's needed. Don't just do it in isolation, please talk to us. Less red tape for the micro farmers. This is critical, bearing in mind what I've showed you around the farmer development chain, where there's a lot of, the big issue is around administration. Allocating suitable land for urban agriculture. Also, what Gareth said, I think definitely I support what he was saying, that in the larger scheme of things, we need to look at the larger systems and where land is allocated. But if this can also be allocated at a smaller scale for the smaller farmers. Support development of market access, such as has been done also with the SASSA grants. And then finally, access to funding for subsidized resources, training, extension services, and infrastructure, which is basically those last two bullet points is very much what Abalimi is doing, but we believe that this needs to also come into the policy. So this is what we would really be asking. And from my side, I'd like to say thank you very much.